You are listening to the Real Men Feel Show with Andy Grant. Real Men Feel encourages men to allow and express all of their emotions. Despite what you may have been taught, all emotions do serve you. Real Men Feel is committed to engaging in discussions that most men aren't having. All links mentioned in each episode are in the show notes found on the blog at realmenfeel.org. Now, let's get into this week's show. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Real Men Feel. This is your host, Andy Grant. And Real Men Feel, I like to think of it as a home for conversations that most men aren't having but really should. And today is one of those conversations. I can think of 2 times in my life that I have talked about my penis with another man. One was when my dad gave me the sex talk at like age 12 or 13. And another was in a men's group where part of the weekend, I think we called it cock talk. And people talked about their penis and their comfort or discomfort or whatever. But that's been it. And I've been around for a lot of years, and it's been twice. So, I perhaps like you, I get spam every day, junk mail folder overflowing, and a lot of it is about erectile dysfunction and male enhancement and all these kind of phrases that make me have a really low opinion of the field. So I don't know what's real, what isn't. I don't know what's work, because again, it just fills my junk mail, so it's hard for me to have much faith in it. But a man that does have faith and experience is our guest today, and I'm really excited to have this talk. We're gonna have Real Men Feel talking about our dicks today. But our guest today is AJ Big Al Alfaro. He's a recognized leader in the male enhancement industry. For more than 20 years, he's helped men in an area that they are most often not comfortable seeking help about. AJ is the founder and lead coach at maleenhancementcoach.com. He specializes in helping men increase their sexual health with programs for both the body and the mind. So welcome, Al.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
Oh, I just butchered that. Welcome, AJ. Jeez, I am tongue-tied. Is this my own nervousness having penis talk here? This is bizarre.
Well, it's definitely. I'm doing pretty well. And yourself?
Cool. And you're in Florida, is that right?
Yes, Central Florida.
Cool. All right. So, let's cut the phrases out of the way. Let's get rid of the polite talk. What exactly is meant by male enhancement?
That's a good question. I know that you mentioned seeing a lot of spams on emails. Male enhancement is generally described as, you want to enhance every aspect of your manhood, not just your penis, but we're talking about sexual confidence, performance. There's definitely a psychology behind it. When people say when you talk about male enhancement emails and things of that nature, a lot of what you're seeing is pills and things like that. But what we're referring to is actual training exercises that you perform. Some of the exercises are covered by the mainstream. Some are not, but they do work. A lot of the information is out there on the internet. It's something that if you're interested in, it's out there if you want to look for it and educate yourself on it.
Yeah, I imagine. So if I dared search for this, I've looked at so just in the last 2 days, I had 10 emails in my junk mail folder that said male enhancement in the subject line. Another dozen said rock hard, and it just kept going on and on. So to dare to navigate that in the world and try to decide, what's a scam and what's actually beneficial, or that there are exercises, there's a physical routine to treat your penis like another appendage that can be built kind of naturally. So is that where you're coming from?
Pretty much so. The penis, the penis is composed of smooth muscle tissue and ligaments, and they can be expanded. It's not like you would train the biceps of your chest. We're not talking about contractile tissue. We're talking about a passive form of training. It's probably better compared to something like yoga. There are some muscular contraction elements, like in exercises with the Kegels. The Kegels, that's a widely known exercise. Even doctors recommend that for incontinence for men and women, but it can also be used to help develop ejaculatory control and increasing the hardness of the penis, resolving any issues with venous insufficiency, I should say.
Okay, so it's a lot more than just Mr. Big Cream. It's a lot more than size.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. There's definitely exercises involved, and there is a science behind it.
Cool. So, and gotta ask, so how did you end up in this line of work?
That's a good question. Uh, I started on the internet in the mid 1990s, and I started with bodybuilding manual. You can still see the remnants of the site, of the book on naturalsize.com. I no longer own that publication, but I wrote it. And when I started, one of the things that I was doing was research into the media at the time. Mostly a lot of magazines. And what I discovered in those magazines was there were a lot of advertisements for surgeries and devices. And because the program that I was offering, the bodybuilding program I was offering, was based on natural training methods, drug-free training, I was thinking it would be a good complement to offer something in the realm of natural penis enlargement. Penis enlargement not having to rely on surgery or even devices. So I started studying, tested some of the techniques on myself. I found that there really wasn't too much out there about it. I mean, I was fascinated by the results. It worked really well, and I just started talking about it. When I started promoting the enlargement course as a bonus, the reaction was incredible. For every 10 emails I'd get, maybe 9 of them were asking about the enlargement bonus. So I started started focusing my efforts on that because that just seemed to be what the guys were interested in. So, and it definitely evolved from there because it's a lot more than enlargement. I think that was probably the big thing in the 90s and maybe the early 2000s. But there's a lot more to it now. We're talking about increasing hardness, stamina, sexual confidence. There's also issues with things like pornography addiction. That's something that was almost unheard of not too long ago, and that's you had that whole generation of young men who have grown up with that, so it's a lot of it does cover a pretty broad umbrella of subjects.
And did you use or investigate the supplements and such, or you decided no, I didn't, I wasn't not going to try these?
I really didn't mess with that too much. I mean, I've experimented with different, supplements for performance and libido, but mostly what I focused on was exercise.
Cool.
And something that I want to preface too is that what's really important. We really stress the importance of health. This type of training, it's not a substitute for a healthy lifestyle. I mean, if you have if you're not fit, if your cardiovascular system is very poor, you're going to have problems. I mean, that's one of the things that we advise guys. And I get asked this a lot. What's the best type of training that you can perform in conjunction with male enhancement training? And I have to say it's cardiovascular exercise. I mean, it makes sense. Healthy heart, strong circulatory system that is going to carry over into your sexual performance. Also, there's a psychology behind it, and the thing I make clear to a lot of guys is that, and I can understand. There's some guys come to me and they're very, anxious, not satisfied with themselves. But it's one of those things where this type of training, if you don't approach it from the proper perspective, can do more harm than good. So it's definitely not a substitute for mental hygiene. Someone comes to me and they're, suicidal or something like that. It's definitely not something I would recommend to them. It's something you want to make sure that, whatever issues you have, they're manageable, and you can approach, your training from a healthy perspective. That's going to maximize your results. It's going to make sure that you get the most out of training, you enjoy your training, and, you don't make things worse.
So is that warning because you've had the experience of men so upset that perhaps they're pondering suicide and they think, well, if only my penis was bigger, then everything would be different in my life?
Exactly. And that's, when you're coming in it from that perspective, chances are that, there's a lot more wrong than your penis size. And I do understand too, because, I've talked with a lot of guys and there's horror stories out there. You have guys who have been in situations where they've had, bad sexual experiences, even a sexual partner who may have said negative things to them. I mean, that's a common thing, and that could be devastating. And I understand that. And I definitely have a lot of compassion for men in that scenario. But then, it really, really all comes down to, and this is one of the things that I stress with this type of training. I don't go into it too much with clients because it's kind of a deep subject, but it really all comes down to the ego. If you are, approaching this, merely to satisfy your ego, you're really, I'm not going to say that you can't succeed with it, but you're just really not going to get the most out of it. I think that this type of training is best used to learn how to transcend your limitations. You start in the physical realm and you work on to the mental and higher realms. You learn to you do this, and you can and you teach yourself how to transcend limitations that others probably didn't know existed. When it comes to things like that, you adjust your mindset. You learn to operate from with mastery of the ego instead of being slave to it. So that's really important. It's something that I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. So I mean, the advice I get has to be from a layman's perspective. But it does make sense. I mean, you're not, you don't want to get into this type of training because someone else is unhappy. Because then the motivation behind that training is going to be negative. Not only that, but that person, you're gonna have negative feelings towards them as much as you might care for them, because from your perspective, this person doesn't think that you're worthy. So it can be tough, and I tell guys, that's why I try to make sure that the clients that I do accept for coaching are those that are approaching training from a positive perspective, or at least from a point to where whatever issues they have are manageable. And that's what I think makes for good training.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it really sounds like you kind of bring a really holistic approach to
Yes.
penis enlargement, and other holistic programs I've heard of certainly don't mention the penis. So it's pointing out like, wow, that kind of is eliminated from all sort of other self-improvement and spiritual growth or physical improvement, and just, wow, yeah, that doesn't get mentioned.
It's something. Well, it's something that it's for the most part taboo to discuss. But if you think about it, I think and I think as a man, you could probably understand that there's very few things that can cause us distress as having issues with just in the sexual realm. If you don't feel like you can perform as a man, I mean that's going to affect you.
Right.
And that's obviously it's not something that's widely discussed, but it is something, and it's something important. If it's how many of us are slaves to our sex drives, or feel that we're inferior, or how many of us approach a relationship from an egoist perspective and say, my goal is just to have sex, and then the relationship comes later, and things like that, because you're doing it to try to prove something to yourself. But when you achieve a certain level of self mastery, you no longer need to do that. You achieve a whole different perspective on things, and not only your training, but the choices, the lifestyle choices you make are not going to be based on the ego, but from a higher perspective.
Yeah, because even the terms used in the industry had me a little concerned, and like male enhancement and your manhood, and like it makes it seem like, yeah, you're, as a man, you're not a man, you're a penis. That's all that matters about you. And so I'm really glad that your approach, the psychology that you help guide people through, is to realize, yeah, you're more than your penis, and you can work on your penis, but yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So have you ever met a man happy with his penis size?
You'd be surprised. I think a lot of guys, start this training not because they feel inferior, but it's something they want to do. I mean, it's you could be happy with yourself and say, well, I'm happy with myself, but I can do better. It doesn't have to be seen from the perspective of something negative, or especially self-loathing. Because you mentioned you go to the gym. I go to the gym too. I mean, it's one of those things where you may be happy with your physical performance now, but that doesn't mean that 2-3 years down the line you don't want to be performing better. So I think that's a good way of looking at it.
Okay, because I asked that because I knew I had one friend who was larger than average. And as word spread through college, he kind of felt like he was just a piece of meat. Like girls wanted to sleep with him just because they heard he had a big penis. And so it was weird that the other end of the spectrum also had a psychological toll. So can you be too big? Is there a danger in identification with size, or?
As far as too big, I do think that's a personal, that would be a personal choice. If you can get to the point to where you say 12 inches, I mean, are you going to use that for sexual contact? I mean, it's something where, I surely there's, I guess, a good range, like a healthy range. Now, that being said, there are guys out there who are motivated to be, as big as possible, the biggest in the world. And that's their own business. That's their own, I'm not going to tell them, you shouldn't do that. But yeah, you keep in mind too, and I know it's very easy to, fall into, perhaps popular thinking that, the bigger the better. But obviously there does come a point where, it can be too much. You can cause harm to your sexual partner if you're very large, and especially if you're not using it carefully. So, there could definitely be a point to where it's just, where too much is just, not even diminishing returns. It would just be unwieldy.
Just pointless. Yeah. All right. And I wonder, is there a predominant age or age range when kind of men seek out help?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I get, I get clients from all age ranges. I would say probably more towards, men in their 20s or so, guys that are really just trying to, figure things out. A lot of them are, they're out in the world now as adults. A lot of these guys, they don't have any experience. They have very little experience, or the experience they do, whatever education they've gotten, it's been from unhealthy sources. I get a lot of guys who, they get their instruction from things like pornography. And that's a very unrealistic, it's a very unrealistic type of thing to model yourself after, especially if you're talking about, sex and very much so if you're talking about, having some kind of an intimate relationship with someone that goes beyond, say, a one night stand or something. If you're imitating what you see in the movies, a lot of that, and a lot of pornography is, not to consult any of the actors or the genre, but a lot of it is based on, it's kind of like a lowest common denominator type of thing. It's very much about the optics, not so much on the human emotion involved. So that you take that out of the equation, and it's not just men. You have a lot of women who think that they have to act like a porn star in order to satisfy their men. So that's you take the emotion out of the equation. And what I found that's very interesting is that these guys are suffering for it. Very, very common complaint that I get from guys, guys who are, mostly, usually single guys who are out, and they want to, just have one night stands or things like that, and they suffer over it. It's like, well, I want to be able to do this, and meanwhile, I'm not, I don't want to, I'm not interested in a serious relationship, and that's, that's fine, to each their own. But then I asked a question. I said, well, you're putting yourself in this anguish about, not being able to function, but if you don't care about the person you're considering having sex with, then why are you so anguished? And then the question that comes out is, they are insecure with themselves. They're functioning from a very low ego perspective. And until you can get out of that kind of thinking, you're going to have problems. It's one of those things where, that's why I tell guys who have serious issues about this kind of training is that, you can cause negative conditioning. You approach your training with a negative mindset. The penis does not function well with negative emotions. It's not like, your biceps or your chest. I mean, you can be upset, afraid or whatnot. You will your biceps to curl, and it's going to curl the weight. You can't force your penis to get erect. You have to encourage it. So if you approach sex or love making with that type of mindset, you're going to have problems. And the problem is that every subsequent event, whether that be training or a sexual encounter, is just that's just you know further negatively conditioning yourself. So that's why it's very, very important. And I make mindset a very, very large part of this type of training.
Yeah. And again, I'm really glad you do. And that it's not just feeding the lowest common denominator. It's not just feeding a broken, dysfunctional ego by, yeah, I'm miserable. All I am is my dick. And oh, good. Now my dick's bigger. So now my misery's bigger. I mean, it can just have so many distorted
It's
effects.
the problems haven't gone away.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just theoretically, if you can solve that problem by having a bigger penis, I mean, the problems have not gone away. You might think they have, but deep down inside, whatever made you feel bad about yourself is very likely still there. So that's why I say, this is not, this type of training is not a substitute for mental hygiene. If you're very emotionally distressed, very self-loathing, you are much better off working on more important aspects of yourself first before getting into this kind of training.
Cool.
Because one thing I see a lot of guys, they get into it and they're very upset with themselves. They go into their training with that negative mindset, and like I mentioned before, you have that negative conditioning effect that happens every time you train. It's like or negative sexual encounter. Imagine you get a guy who is not very sexually experienced. He's approaching a sexual encounter. He's kind of anxious. Things go badly. And now he's upset. Now he's scared. He has another encounter. He's already going into it with that added fear. He fails again, and it gets worse and worse and worse. So the key is to take a step back and try to approach things from a more objective point of view, which can be very difficult, especially when we're talking about things like sex. But if one is trapped in that vicious cycle, that's what has to happen. You have to be able to get yourself out of it, because you have some guys who spend years or even the rest of their life afraid of having another negative experience because of that.
So women can, and society and everything openly talks about breast enhancement and lip enhancement, even butt enhancement, yet I don't see much talk around male enhancement. So why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but that's a very fundamental aspect of a man's psyche. And with a different hat on, I could say, if you improve your performance and your size, you can feel better about yourself, as long as you're doing everything else that you're supposed to do that comes with it. We're talking about your virility, how you feel about yourself as a man. So, I would really like to, it would be interesting to have an answer to that. But, I guess it has to, some people conflate the penis with power. Think about how, you have all this, phallic symbolism, that goes back, ancient, because, the phallus is a sign of true power. I mean, like I mentioned before, to have an erection, it's not just enough to be strong physically, but you have to have that, have a mindset that's unencumbered enough to allow you to perform naturally. That's where that power comes from. And some people attribute negative connotations to that power. I guess whatever body of entities that want to see men weakened or debased, I guess if you can put it, those are probably the same types of entities that are opposed to men improving themselves in that capacity. If they exist.
Okay. So have you had, I imagine have you had challenges overcoming kind of the snake oil reputation with so much spam and scams as you try to go out into the world with coaching and books?
Yes, I have. And that's one of the reasons why I try, ever since I've started, I've tried to have a very strong presence in the forums. I mean, I don't do any heavy advertising on my own. It's really, a lot of it's word of mouth, or, I have, affiliates who sign up and they promote either the book or the coaching that way. But, I like to, I tell guys this too. I said, the information is out there. And the forums that I participate on, I mean, and I tell guys, don't worry about the coaching. You know, you're interested in coaching is that can come later on. I said, educate yourself, learn about these techniques, try them out on your own, and see if they work for you. And if it's something that if you try it, you like it, you find that it's worthy, then those are the type of those are the type of clients I want. I really try to emphasize education when it comes to the type of service that I do.
So being in this forums and being in groups of guys looking for enhancement to increase their size, what are some of the common mistakes you find people making?
Definitely approaching it with the mindset of thinking more is better. I tell guys, first off, it's kind of a disclaimer thing. Make sure that you have a thorough checkup before you get started, just like with any other type of training regimen. If there's something wrong, whether physically or organically, metabolically, whatever, you want to make sure that you get that taken care of before you start any training. And then when you do start, always err on the side of caution. Always start extremely light. Training form, whatever exercise you're performing, you want to make sure to perform that with the best form possible. You don't want to build a foundation on faulty form, because best case scenario, you make less gains. Worst case scenario, you can hurt yourself. So you definitely want to ease into this type of training. If your erection quality is poor, it's best to focus on that first before you get into any enlargement exercises. So that's I have a criteria that I use with clients when they sign up, and I have them fill out their new client interview, and I ask a series of questions, and one of them is describing their erection quality, and sexual self-confidence. Those are two very big factors that can tell me whether or not a trainee is ready for a full routine, or whether they need to start with something a bit more remedial to make sure that they really develop that solid foundation that they can build on.
And how does a male enhancement coach work with clients? Is it in person? Can someone be anywhere in the world?
It's anywhere in the world. Most of my communication is via email. I have a premium client service where I chat with them on the phone, or I might do Skype. It's usually not any kind of a live thing. Most men value their privacy, and I can understand that. So, but it's essentially what happens when a client signs up for the service. They're instructed to fill out what we call a new client interview. It's essentially a baseline question, and then based on their responses, that's where either I will come up with a routine for them, or I'll follow up with more questions. And these clients are instructed to keep their training in a journal that I have on the site. It's a private journal for every individual member, and I use that journal. I regularly check their journals to make sure that they're sticking to their training. Of course, there's definitely email communication back and forth with the premium clients. There's regular phone calls as they need them. So yeah, it's not one of those things where here's a routine, have a good time. I really want to make sure that these guys are doing what they're supposed to and getting the most out of it. If things are going well, they might need just a little nudge here and there to make sure that they're doing the right thing. Things are going poorly, obviously, then that merits a bit more of a training overhaul. But definitely, the communication, the journal, all of that. It's really about using all of these tools together to try to make sure that these guys are getting the most out of their training experience.
So you mentioned training and routines. So is there kind of an average routine of like how many minutes per day, or is it stretches and exercise? Like how similar to personal training?
There are some similarities there. For example, there's generic routines, but the thing about this type of training is it is individualized. I can give out general templates of things, but as someone evolves with their training, as weeks go by, and I use the data from their journal, and it's not just what exercises they're doing, how many reps or how many minutes. There's a lot of other data in there too. Erection quality, regular measurements that you're taking, sexual confidence, libido. All of those things come into play, and based on those factors, that's how I adjust the training and make sure it's customized to not only the client's goals but also to their abilities.
And are there any sort of typical results that your clients get that you can share?
Well, I would say that there's a. We did conduct a client study some years back. I could send you the link to that. It's over 60 clients, and these are best gainers. And you had some guys making, like an average of an inch in 3 months or so, a half inch to an inch in length. Girth is a little harder to come by, but for every, just like the formula of a cylinder. I mean, a very small girth increase, it's going to be a disproportionately large volumetric increase. So even a half inch gain in girth, I mean that's huge. That can make a very huge difference in the amount of volume you have.
And like, how quickly does a client start seeing gains and a difference?
Well, the first gains to be expected will be what we call EQ, or erection quality gain. Gains in just improvement of the hardness and the stamina. Then what you'll start noticing is flaccid gains. Your penis will be it'll appear larger in flaccid state, and then what you should be seeing after that comes measurable erect gains. I do say I instruct clients to measure about every 2 weeks. Usually by the fourth week, you want to see some kind of satisfactory improvement. If you haven't seen any satisfactory improvement by then there's something amiss.
And could that be that the client isn't doing the work that they're saying, or just different exercises, different techniques would be tried, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, there could be there's definitely a lot of factors at play. I mean, physical condition, like I mentioned before. I mean, if you have a guy who's very poor level of fitness, poor dietary habits, and they're going to have a lot harder time gaining than someone who, say, is a triathlete who watches what they eat and very heart healthy. Okay. It's also the type of training they do. Based on the results. When I give that generic template to some guys, that I don't know anything about their training history. It's more of like a test. Training is very much like a scientific experiment. You set up the you have the control, you set up the variables, and then you test things out, and you alter a variable here, you alter a variable there, and see how things go with that. And if certain alterations lead to improvements, we keep going in that direction. If the alterations lead to nothing or negative results, then we scrap that and we approach it from another angle. But, it definitely has a lot to do with the feedback I get from them, right. Not just from our communication via email, but from their training journals.
Cool. So yeah, my penis can't be healthier than the rest of me. It can't be.
Yes, that's very much so.
Okay. And are improvements and gains made? Are they permanent, or will they stop if I stop the routine? Or?
Well, we have what's called a process cementing. Essentially, once you achieve your goals, you taper off your training. You taper off the volume of your training. What you do need to do, though, is make sure you are maintaining a high level of erection quality. This is, if you make you do your training, you make your gains, and all of a sudden you decide, well, now I'm going to lead a couch potato lifestyle. You're going to atrophy. It's just like, it's a lot easier to maintain, penis size gains than it is with, say, like, bodybuilding type gains. As long as you're getting regular, rock hard erections, and you're encouraging that through stamina specific training, or, the best form of a stamina specific training you can perform is, live, vigorous sexual activity. And if you're very active in that capacity, that in and of itself should be sufficient to help you to maintain your gains.
And
it's really all about keeping those tissues stretched, the ligaments, the fascia, tunica, making sure that they remain, that they're stretched frequently so that you maintain that size.
And can someone be too old or too young to take on the routine?
Well, I don't counsel anyone under 18 years of age. So, and I don't suggest that to anyone under 18 years of age. Now, as far as too old, I've had conversations with men in their 70s who have made progress with the program. So I guess it's really all about just, as long as they're able to train, some gains should be possible. Granted, there are other factors at work. If someone is very sick, I wouldn't expect them to make the same type of gains as someone who's healthy. but you work with what you got.
Cool. And aside from size and stamina and erection quality, how else does a man going through this program, what other effects show up in their life?
Well, I think the most notable effect is those the unseen effects, the effect on the psyche, like how you feel about yourself, and I get a lot of guys who tell me that it's like, wow, I didn't think this was possible. You feel like you can do anything. You transcend limitations. I have guys who may have had issues with performance, like performance anxiety, and then they overcome that. And what's interesting is that there's a very common theme amongst these type of men is that they have a level of perspective that they didn't have before. It's almost like they've been immunized in a sense from that fear. It's like it's almost like when you're little and you're afraid of the dark, and then you realize there's nothing to be afraid of. You master that aspect of yourself, and for these guys to feel like, wow, I can perform, I am worthy enough to have a healthy sex life. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can do, I can perform with anyone who will have me. That's a good feeling, as opposed to feeling, well, I'm not good enough. Is this person going to think this and that? You're not preoccupied with those negative thoughts. I mean, that's a burden. It's a burden for a lot of men. And just like I imagine, women have their own concerns about their appearance, or any perceptions that they might I think other people have of them. So men have that too, just about different things, superficially different things, but nonetheless they're different.
And are you familiar with any research that shows that an improved sex life contributes to a happier life overall, or even a longer life?
There's definitely studies on that, and you talk about doctors who recommend staying sexually active for as long as you can, as long as you're able to. I mean, that's a big part of human beings' life. Not to use sex as for anything, but to just experience it. It's a joyful experience. I mean, you're with someone you love, you care about, you're intimate with each other. You're exchanging deeper feelings than just about any other type of scenario you can imagine. You're both naked before each other. I mean, that's that's a pretty deep experience, and most people like sex. So I mean, if you can perform well at it, you don't have to be encumbered by negative self perceptions. I mean, that can go a long way towards making you making you happier. Granted, it's not so much that in and of itself is going to increase happiness as much as it is just taking away the negative, and then from there you can build towards more happiness.
Now, your latest book is called The Ultimate Guide to Male Enhancement. So tell me a little bit about what you're covering in the book.
What I've tried to do is I've tried to just condense my experiences with with my clients, and the things I've learned into that book. Not just the enlargement aspect, but also the development of sexual stamina, ejaculatory control, sexual confidence. We discuss a lot of other issues that might come up. Some guys have issues with things like curvatures and things that we go into that as well. There's a lot of discussion on physical health. I even have some routines in there for a physical exercise. Outside of male enhancement. Talking about gym-based exercise. Discussing on nutrition, supplements, device-based training. That's an alternative for a lot of guys who don't. Most of the exercise that I recommend with the coaching are manual. Essentially you perform with your hands, but there are devices that you can use, pumps and extenders. I mean, if you use those correctly, they can work really well. And I have some content from other authors, other guys that I've worked with in the field who have added to the book. So I've really tried to put my heart into it. Thankfully, those who've read it have had good things to say about it.
So can men make gains in their manhood with the book alone, or is it meant to be is this helping clients of the coaching program, or how's it intended
Well,
to serve?
I think that the book can definitely give you it's a guide, the ultimate guide. So I mean, if you follow the lessons in the book, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to make gains. And coaching isn't for everyone. If you're the type of guy who likes, for example, you go to the gym, you might feel like, well, I want a condensed experience. I want someone to guide me. I mean, well, that's what coaching is for. Whether it be uh, like coaching in the gym or coaching for this purpose. But a lot of guys are self-starters who just don't like the idea of a coach, and guys who if that's the mindset, then the book should give you. It definitely should give you the fundamentals on how to get started at the very least.
Cool. And I wonder how and if has your own mindset changed in working with men over the last almost 20 years on this?
Well, I'd say, I guess the best way to describe this is humbled. Known some guys for a long time. You see the arcs that their lives take. I've had some guys who come to me miserable with all sorts of just talking about all sorts of issues and whatnot. Even guys that I can't coach because they're in a position where there's really they should be starting them. But then as time goes by, they start getting a little more confidence, and they have what I like to describe with some of these guys in particular is that epiphany moment. They realize it's like, wow, all of this time and energy wasted in thinking negatively about myself when I had the power within me the whole time to do what I needed to do. And you realize it, and it changes your perspective. And you apply it to you help other guys with their issues, and you see that a lot on the forums. That's one of the reasons why I love the forums. You see a lot of guys there. They're not being paid to be there. They're just they're there in their own free time, and they're helping guys out. They're trying to teach them follow in their footsteps and the success they made, and you see that happening. You see that happening. It's like a passing it on, so to speak, paying it forward. I think you're saying.
Cool. And is there one thing top of mind that you wish more men knew about this subject or anything?
I think it's that the mind and your willpower have a lot more influence in your life than you think it does. I think a lot of people feel hopeless, and it's interesting how as society gets more technologically advanced, some of us are at risk of throwing away that that hard fought heritage. We fought our way to the top of the food chain, and it's very easy to just think, well, now I can sit back and have computers or whatever do all this stuff for me. And I think that could be potentially dangerous because it does take away a sense of self-sufficiency. So I mean, and the work, you have to do the work. You can't expect other people to do your most fundamental work for you. And I think that applies to a lot of things. Where there's coaching, I think a very popular one, and I think this is in the Venn diagram of things, there are certain crossovers with things like marriage counseling. It's like you have a couple, they go to a marriage counselor, and the marriage counselor sees what's wrong, gives them particular instructions, tells them these are certain limitations that you have to establish with each other. You don't cross certain boundaries with each other, boundaries of respect. And these guys, these couples, they go back home and then they start fighting with each other, cursing each other out. It's like they learn nothing. And the marriage counselor can't do anything more than advise you. Just like the coaching, the book, I can't do anything more than advise a client. They have to do the work. When you put into the work, you get results.
Cool. Yeah, and again, true with anything.
And there you go. And you learn there's fundamental things. And I come across men who have no structure, and even something as simple as a routine, a male enhancement routine, where there's structure. You're doing, you're going from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 and so forth, and you're doing it, X amount of times a week. You have a schedule that you follow. That's self-discipline. And that's lacking. So even something as little as that can make a huge difference, especially when you start seeing results. And these are results that you are causing for yourself through your own hard work.
Yeah. So there's got to be again a level of accomplishment and reward that I imagine some guys didn't expect.
Exactly. I mean, you get a lot of guys, and again, it's understandable that there'd be doubts. You get into this and you think, well, does this really work? And then when you try it out and you start seeing those changes, I mean, especially those first EQ changes. Like the guys, you have guys who talk about, guys who start getting older, they don't have morning wood like they used to, or they're just not able to maintain their erections like they used to, and they start performing these exercises, and all of a sudden they start, within a couple of weeks, they start noticing that difference. It's like, hey, what's going on here?
Hmm.
And that, that first inclination that, hey, this might actually work. Let me build on that and let me keep going with it. And you keep setting the bar higher and higher and higher for yourself. And years pass, and you look, you look back from that peak that you put yourself on. You see, look how far I've come.
Cool. Is there anything you've learned that you wish you had learned at a younger age?
Well, I think there's a lot of lessons that I've learned just from other guys. Because as a coach, I'm much more of an observer, and some of these I wouldn't be where I'm at today without these guys experimenting on themselves and giving feedback. And just it's amazing how guys from all different sorts of backgrounds and scenarios and positions and whatnot, how they can partake in something like this and make changes. And I think it would have been nice to know certain things when I was younger, especially even outside of the whole male enhancement field. But something related to it is just that that knowledge that you don't have to see yourself as less than. You have the ability to make the changes you want. Through your own hard work, through your own application of willpower.
Hmm. And in the book, The Ultimate Guide to Male Enhancement, you talk about that men can become multi-orgasmic. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's what's interesting is that happens to a lot of guys accidentally, almost. There's a very popular exercise, and I consider this probably the best exercise you can perform. It's called the stop and start. It's also known as edging. It's essentially what it is. It's very controlled masturbation. You're attempting to simulate what you'd expect to feel during a sexual encounter. Now, if you're sexually active and you want to perform these techniques with your partner, that works even better. But for someone who doesn't have that much control, or is not sexually active at that time, the manual version can at least get you started. And the initial, the first goal of this exercise is you want to try to get it to 20 to 25 minutes. Even if, and I say this with a different hat on, because I know when I talk about form for the other exercises, that doesn't necessarily apply to this one, because you go from 0 to 20 to 25 minutes. There's probably going to be periods where your erection starts to fade, or you have to stop or whatnot. But once you get to that point, you reach a certain threshold. And what's interesting is that 20 to 25 minute mark, that applies to a lot of other things. If you're familiar with endurance training, you probably know that if you can't, let's just use running for example. Until you get to the point where you can run for 20 to 25 minutes straight, chances are you're going to get out. You hit that barrier a lot sooner. But once you hit that threshold, you hit. It's like you reach a new level of ability to where you can just keep sustaining that activity for a lot longer. And it's very much like that with this type of training. So the first goal would be to master that temporal aspect. Then we start focusing on the aspects of hardness and ejaculatory control. And the ejaculatory control part is where we start getting into multiple male orgasm. There's an exercise that we call the Kegel. It's a very popular exercise. Essentially what you're doing is, I recommend performing with an erection and this exercise, what you do is you simulate holding back the flow of urine. The same muscles that you contract for that causes a penis to rise, contract, so to speak, and the penis itself expands, hyper expands with blood, but the penis itself it contracts upwards. But now a well-timed Kegel can, performed in conjunction with that exercise, can either accelerate or allow you to hold back your orgasm. But there's that space in between there where if you Kegel at just the right time, you could induce what's called the dry orgasm. That's where you orgasm but without ejaculation. Now that's very difficult to do at first. It can be very difficult to do at first, and a lot of times it happens in an accident, and it's not a very smooth process. But then what happens once you start experimenting in that realm, you start, it's like anything, it's like any other type of conditioning. You don't have to think about it anymore. You go by the feel of the sensation. Well, now I have to do this, and it becomes more of an automatic function, and then it gets to the point to where you can, you time that Kegel just right, allow yourself to have that dry orgasm. You have a feeling of orgasm with little or no ejaculation, and your penis stays hard.
So, all right, where can people buy this book?
Well, they can go to ultimatemale-enhancement.com. That's ultimate-male-enhancement.com.
Cool. And where can people learn more about you and the coaching you offer? Is it the same site or something else?
That's a different site. It's at male-enhancementcoach.com.
Cool.
I'm also a popular fixture at forums like pegym.com and mattersofsize.com. And I think, if someone is really interested in this, but they're kind of on the fence about whether or not to start, I think the forums are an excellent place to start. There's a lot of information, and I've been privileged to go to be able to see how this niche has developed. And when I first started, there was almost nothing out there. Now there's so much information about it. I mean, if you know where to look, it can be confusing. But there's, you go to these sites and you read the pinned threads and whatnot and how to get started, and you learn how to get started with the process. Even without if you want the coaching in the book, I'm here for you. But if you want to do it on your own, you definitely, the tools are there for you to do so.
Right. So you're not claiming to have invented something new. You've just done the investigative work and gathered all in one place.
I'm not reinventing the wheel. I've done nothing more than, I may have, come up with a few exercises here and there, but I mean, a lot of these, the concepts, I mean, they were proven by the guys who've done the training, made the games.
Cool.
And that's so you say it's just, some of human knowledge. That's what you're seeing on these forums.
Right. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share, AJ?
I just want to thank you for having me on, and I think it's been a great, very interesting conversation. And just thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah, I came in here very uneducated on the whole thing. Just again going by spam and pills and creams and spices and all that kind of stuff coming at me for years and years. So I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm going to check out the book. And thank you. So I'll let people. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I might let people know about my experience. I'll say that.
Sure. If you need any help, just let me know. I'll do my best to guide you.
Cool. And so thanks for your time, AJ. Thanks for putting all this work out there, and thanks for, again, in these forums and in your business, having conversations that most men aren't having, but probably all should be.
Thank you so much.
Cool. So wherever you're discovering Real Men Feel, give us a like, a subscribe, check in with your penis over time, right? Realize that you are more than your manhood, but that is, it's an important part of you, and you can change any aspect of you. If there's any part of you that you're not happy with, there's something that you can do about it, and I think that's pretty cool. All right, feel everybody. Bye. Thank you for listening to Real Men Feel. Reach out to us at realmenfeel@gmail.com. Learn more about Andy Grant at theandygrant.com. Until next time, visit realmenfeel.org or the Real Men Feel Facebook group and share what you thought of this episode. Please give this podcast a review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you are discovering Real Men Feel.